Hello, welcome to day 6, the penultimate day
Day
of,
six.
of the Nickel Independent Film Festival. My name is Devin Shears. I'm Director of Program and Communications back in the Winter Chalet. So the fireside chat, there's the fireplace. We have a lot of people, again, today to speak with, so I'm just going to really quickly run off the films that are available over at nickelfestival.com. We've got 2 programs. One is a sort of youth-oriented program with lots of films in it. We have Girl with the Red Balloon, a music video directed by Michael Vennert. That's a local filmmaker. Beyond the Line by Chinook Choi. See Us by Taylor Godin. The Pursuit of Knowledge by Shanley Pomeroy, another great local filmmaker. Pebbles, directed by Nathania Zaney. Hekamedia, directed by Gloria Mercer. Ivet and Michuco, directed by Ignacio Manu. Disconnected, directed by Knowles. Roots of Lacrosse, directed by Shelby Adams and Joanne Storkin. And then in our second program, we have The Beekmann Incident, which is a very delightful animated piece by Jared Weiss. Vent by Amin Falanzada. Where There's Tea, There's Hope, a local film directed by Noir. Untold, directed by Michael Kunov. Unleashed, directed by Sean Wurs. Dead Meat by local filmmaker Jake Delaney. Second Skin, directed by Karam Ugan and Ismet Ergun. Tomorrow's Headline, local film, directed by Jeff Lewis. And ROSA, directed by Suha Araj. Really, really great films today. Some really great filmmakers here in the chat to talk about some of these films. And we're going to start off with Kennedy Knowles, director of Disconnected. Hello, Kennedy. How are you?
Hi, it's great to be here with all of you. I'm really excited and honored to be a part of this festival.
Thank you so much. We're really happy to have you. This is a really unique project. Can you tell people a little bit about it?
Yeah, Disconnected was created last year, just about a year ago, in the middle of lockdown here in America. And it was shot entirely remotely over Zoom and FaceTime for the kids. And it tells the story of different experiences during COVID-19 and the BLM movement from the perspective of America's youth. I took stories from the kids that I was teaching online and from my 2 kids and sort of expanded those into little vignettes about their experiences.
Yeah, it's like a real tapestry of all these different things. Like it's super fascinating. So what was the performers in the film? Are those your students?
Some of them are our students, yeah, at the Atlanta Workshop Players here in Atlanta, Georgia. And then I was also teaching acting and doing social justice work online. And so sort of just taking each day, we would check in and I'd say, what are you up to? What's going on? And they would say things like, I haven't left my house in 3 days, or, my parents are driving me crazy. And so that sort of became the inspiration for these different points of view for the kids.
So these little, what was it like organizing all of that? Because it's a lot of different little pieces, and to do it all remotely, what was it like directing that?
I feel like all of the last year was a lot of flexibility and pivoting and kind of throwing yourself into it in different ways and finding different creative avenues. So it really was a lot of pre-production with my team. I had 3 DPs, I had 4 producers, and then myself and all the kids. And really it was a lot of us, the production team, before really building these stories, saying, okay, how do we want it to look? What are each of these 3 chapters gonna what's the tone of each one of them? And then the DPs would meet with the kids and on Zoom and sort of do location scouting in their houses to figure out where they would shoot. They would teach them how to do lighting, and then I would hop onto the Zoom and okay it, and then the kids would shoot it and send it to us.
Wow.
So it really was a lot of flexibility also on my part and trust as the director that it was going to be what it needed to be. The tone was going to be what it was because of the situation we were in. So as long as I allowed that to dictate the aesthetics rather than me have this concept of a vision, the vision really was, how can we capture this moment in a way that feels authentic and also has an artistic vision.
Yeah, and I think you were really successful in that. How long did it take to film?
The filming itself took 6 days.
Oh, okay,
But
interesting.
it was really, yeah.
Yeah, because it feels like it really. One of the questions I've written down, which I guess it doesn't really apply, was if it changed much over the course of a year, because it feels like it really. I don't know. It feels very expansive. It feels like it really encaptures the entire year in a weird way.
Yeah, and I think that's just when we really, because we tried, and Malachi, my co-writer, who really wrote the BLM storyline, he was in New York protesting, and I really let him take that piece of it. And I feel like with all storytellers, if you tell a story that has a root in something very real and true, it resonates beyond the moment, hopefully. Right. And maybe not in the same way as it did a year ago. So we watched it a year ago, and everyone sort of is in it and emotional and identifying with it. And then we watch it a year later, and we actually screened it recently, and people said, I forgot what it felt like to be in that. And then watching it, I was reminded, oh, we all went through this. These kids went through this experience, and we're kind of in this weird middle ground right now. So it's just interesting. It does have this life to it because I feel like it was these kids' stories, reflected.
Yeah, and that's giving space to like youth stories in particular, I think is also what's really special about it. As I'm interested to hear a little bit about your role as a teacher as well, and the way that it intersected with the making of this film.
Yeah, I teach acting and applied theater and theater for social justice with teens and young adults. And so really a lot of the work that we do is, how do you tell your story? How do you tell your story? How do you tell other stories in a way that honors them and makes space for those different points of view? And so really in the acting classes, a lot of the kids that are in the film are kids that I work with throughout the year. And so we were able to have those conversations. And before we even sat down to write it, we had sessions with the kids, and I would ask them questions about what are the topics, what are the pieces that are really coming up for you? And over it was mental health, it was relationships, it was struggle with school, and it was BLM and LGBTQ plus. Yeah. Like those were the stories. And I think that those are stories that are larger than COVID. It's just COVID really brought them to the focus in a way that they hadn't been shown, or, they came to crisis for a lot of these kids.
And what was having them articulate those experiences through performances? Did they find that, I don't know, cathartic? I don't know if that's the right word, but like, what was that process like for them?
Yeah, when I've talked with them and they've joined me for talkbacks, what they reflect back is that it felt like an opportunity to express what they were feeling and to connect with other kids and let other kids know that they aren't alone in that. And some of our kids who, in the end, who raise their fists, right? That sort of final moment when all the kids come together. Some of the kids had not been able to go to protests because they're immunocompromised or because of the virus. And they said, thank you, this is our opportunity to stand as allies. This is where we get to show that we are also a part of this movement and we support what they're doing. And so that was very touching for me. And it's provided opportunity for a lot of conversations. So not only for the actors, but for the kids who watch it to be able to reflect and talk with each other about these different issues.
Well, I think it's a really rich film. There's a lot happen. I'm really excited to be sharing it. Just wrapping up, is there anything you hope people take away from it?
I think there are a lot of things I hope that they take away from it. I hope that that kids, youth that see it are able to know that they're not alone in their struggles coming out of this, or as we're moving through it. I don't even know if we're coming out, but moving through it.
Six.
You know, that they are able to see that their experience is not alone, and that when we are able to connect, there is power in that, and there's comfort, and there's healing. So I think for kids, I really hope that that's what they see. For adults, I hope that they are reminded that the kids are not just, you know, put them in school, put them out of school, put them in front of a screen, that they have had experiences and challenges that need to be dealt with grace, and that there's space for these kids to heal and to come through this and to figure out who they are on the other side, that we're not just sort of pushing them back into school and saying, okay, well, that was done. Boy, that was rough. Let's get back to life, right? That we really take the time to listen and to honor what those experiences were. So I think that's what I hope people come away from.
Well, I think that I think they will, because it's a really lovely film. Really, I think captures this moment really well, and I really thank you for sharing it with us and speaking with us today.
Well, thank you very much, Devin. I'm glad that it resonated with you, and it's a real honor to be a part of this lineup and this program and festival. So thank you.
Feelings mutual. Thank you so much. All right, we've got more filmmakers to speak with. We're going to move along. Next up, we've got Joanne Storkin, co-director of Roots of Lacrosse. Hi, Joanne.
Hi. I have to tell Kennedy, I just cannot believe how she did that through Zoom. The organization that must have taken, and it just sounds so fascinating. I just have to applaud her. Awesome.
I know. I rewatched it again last night, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, I can't imagine organizing this many.
I couldn't have done that, honestly.
How many young people over Zoom directing these scenes? Yeah, it's really a special piece. But Roots of Lacrosse, though, also I will say, I also watched it last night. Another, I think, very, very rich documentary. You know, in 20 minutes, it has, I don't know, I feel like you learned so much. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's about?
Well, the Roots of Lacrosse actually is part of a larger film on men's lacrosse called The Rules of Lacrosse. And it was sort of born out of the COVID thing, because we were all scheduled to have our documentary shown outside of Toronto in 2019 at a film festival there. And all of a sudden, everything was shut down. So in order to keep interest in the film, what I thought is I would take rule number 1, which is honor and appreciate the history of the game, and I would turn it into a short documentary.
Oh,
and I needed some help because I had no women's lacrosse in the film, and I knew less about women's indigenous lacrosse. And that's where Shelby Adams from Dreamcatcher Studios up in Akwesasne, she really helped me, especially with the women's section about indigenous women's lacrosse. So that's basically how it came about.
Amazing. So that's super interesting. That's part of like an even larger piece about lacrosse. What attracted you to lacrosse? What made you want to make a film about lacrosse?
It kind of found me. Actually, I used to be a screenwriter before I had a production company, and I was doing a film about lacrosse, kind of like a coming of age story. And through that and through all my research, I began running and meeting people, interviewing them for the film. And then one of the people I interviewed had a short film on lacrosse, about 26 minutes. Tom Ryan, he's a player and a coach. I said, this thing's great. If we add 20 more minutes, I think I could get it on PBS. So the 20 minutes actually turned into a 2-hour film, and that's how I got involved.
And this film in particular focuses on, well, like the title says, the roots of lacrosse. Its roots in, what I thought was interesting was the variety of different styles of play across different indigenous tribes and cultures across North America. Was that something that you were aware of going into it, or was that something you discovered over the course of making the film?
Quite frankly, I discovered it over the course of the film because, it's Iroquois or that kind of lacrosse is what's basically played in colleges, etc. I didn't know much about the other stickball games. And through research, I thought, oh my goodness, I should really, the Cherokee, the Choctaw, all these different, the Great Lakes game. I really wanted to include it. So I found a cultural specialist, J.P. Johnson from Oklahoma. So he was a big help. And that's how I ended up in all 3 types of North American lacrosse.
Did you find that these, because one thing that I thought was super interesting in it is this sort of maybe holistic is not the right word, but there's this one person you interviewed who talks about the importance of using wood to make the
Yes.
sticks.
Yes.
Do you find, is that like a different, is that common across like North American lacrosse, or is that very specific to these indigenous communities?
I feel it's very specific to the indigenous communities because there's, the very few people still use the wood. I think they can use it in some of the international games, but a lot of people are against the wood because it really hurts when you get hit by it. And some people feel it's an unfair advantage if someone's using a wood stick. So, and we have a whole section on the wooden stick in our large documentary. It says, use a wooden stick only if you can handle it. It's a very different game when you use wood. So, but it's kind of making a comeback. I belong to a couple of Facebook pages on traditional lacrosse sticks, and it's amazing how many people are trying to buy them and for their children. So, very interesting.
That is interesting. Lacrosse is, of course, Canada's national sport officially.
Right.
Though I would say maybe it's obviously not as well known as something like hockey or something like that.
Correct.
What's the lacrosse scene in the States like?
I'd say it's growing by leaps and bounds. It's just really coming to its own. Certain areas of the United States seem to be more prevalent. For some reason, Denver, Dallas, they seem to be really picking up the indoor game as well as the outdoor game. Of course, a lot of the East Coast colleges have always had lacrosse, but in the West Coast, we're seeing a lot of the universities and colleges, D1, D2, D3, are now picking up the game. So it is supposed to be the fastest growing sport in the United States.
Interesting. Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I got to ask, Gretzky, how'd you get him? Tell the story there.
You're not even going to believe that's totally a fluke. In fact, honestly, I wasn't even going to have him in it because it was just, I was at a bar during the AT&T. It's a big golf tournament here. And I don't know, someone said something about lacrosse and I hear someone yelling across the room, "Hey, you know something about lacrosse? I want to talk to you. That's my sport." I'm going, and someone's going, and I know nothing about ice hockey. Someone's going, "Hey, that's Wayne Gretzky." I go, I don't want to talk to him. I don't want to talk to a professional athlete about lacrosse. Just ignore him. I literally said, ignore him. So finally he comes over and he goes, "Why? I just want to ask you a question about lacrosse." I'm going, oh no. So the guy sitting across from me goes, "Oh, here, Mr. Gretzky, take my seat." I'm going, oh God. Why is he was getting like crazy, like passionate. I didn't know. I thought he was mad. He's going, "I just have a question." I go, "Okay, shoot. What is your question?" And he said, "Who is the best box lacrosse player to have ever played?" And I said, "It's John Tavares." And he goes, "I knew you were going to say that. That's as stupid as saying Wayne Gretzky is the best ice hockey player." I said, "Wait, I thought you were Wayne Gretzky." He goes, "I am. I'm just trying to make a point. I wasn't the best." I said, "Really?" I knew nothing. The only other name I recognized would have been Bobby Orr. I go, "Who was?" He said, "Gordie Howe." Didn't have the nerve to say I never heard of Gordie Howe. He goes, "He was so much better than me." And he tells me why he's better, even though the stats would belie that. But now I want to know more about lacrosse. I go, "Well, tell me who the best lacrosse player was," because that's what I'm interested in. And then he explained that Gaylord Palace, even if you looked at John Tavares' stats versus Gaylord Palace, he felt that Gaylord Palace was a much better player. And so we do a whole section about that the stats don't tell the whole story about what is true greatness in a sport.
That's super interesting. Wow, that's an amazing story. So it's almost like it's almost like Gretzky like pushed his way into the documentary. It's not like most of the time you're trying to chase after people to get these big.
No, he didn't know I was doing a documentary. I don't know how he heard. So I said, "Would you say that in my documentary?" He goes, "Yeah, sure. When?" I go, "I don't know. You tell me." He goes, "Tomorrow." I said, "Right, I'm going to get a camera crew together and you're going to be available. I know you're playing in a golf tournament tomorrow." He goes, here's my phone number. Text me at 1:00. I'll be there." I'm going, "I don't believe you." He goes, I go, how do I know you didn't give me a fake number just now? He goes, here's my phone, call it. I want to be in it. He goes, I love lacrosse. I'm not kidding. That is a true story.
That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing.
I kind of want to see a short film about that experience.
Yeah.
It was, I really did not want to do it because first of all, I had to go home and stayed up half the night learning about Wayne Gretzky and lacrosse. And I had, and thank God the next morning he was playing at a golf course where I happened to be a member. Otherwise, I don't think I could have swung it, so pardon the puns.
No. Well, that's incredible. Wrapping up, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Kennedy. What do you hope, if someone's watching this documentary and doesn't know anything about lacrosse or its roots, what do you hope people take away from it?
Oh, I really, really just want to know that this is more than a game that just kind of came in. Americans think it's a college game. It started in colleges. And this game, not only does it have its roots in Canada as well, but the true spirit of the game, it's a medicine game to heal people. And that was to keep, that was the whole purpose of lacrosse. It's got an incredible background, a rich history, and a lot of people just don't even know that. I didn't, frankly.
Yeah, well, I think we often see sport as, competitive. Which is perhaps a symptom of the culture that we live in, but like going back on it and seeing it as something that sure is a game between people, and it talks about it maybe being training for war and stuff, but also that it's about medicine and healing. I think is actually quite moving, and I think it's a really, really great short film, and I'm excited to see the full piece once
thank you
at some point. Great.
Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Joanne.
Thank you.
All right. We've got those two great documentaries. Now we've got a couple short fiction films by some local filmmakers we're going to speak to. First, we're going to talk to Noir, director of Where There's Tea, There's Hope. Hello, Lauren.
Hello.
How you doing today?
I'm doing great. And thanks so much for interviewing me. Thanks so much thanks to everybody in the Nickel, too, for accepting my film into the Nickel. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're really excited to have it. Why don't you tell the people a little bit about what the film is about?
Well, it's a short film. It's 7 minutes long. It's what inspired me was that I love these old episodes of The Twilight Zone, and Rod Serling and all that sort of twist. And I've always been fascinated with sort of reality, and how we perceive reality, and the idea that if you could take a thread of reality and just start pulling that thread, and you kept pulling and with your entire reality collapse. And that's sort of the idea behind the film. So it's just some guy wakes up in the morning and has his coffee and things start to go awry. And so that's the idea I had for the film, and how to twist that around. I did it through NIFCO. It's first time filmmakers project through NIFCO. And I was able to do it, shot it late in 2019, just before the COVID hit, luckily.
Yes.
So we managed to get it all done before that.
Well, I think it's also, when I was watching it, I knew that it was made before COVID because I, submitted last year. But I don't know, it did strike me, maybe just like it seems easy to read everything through the lens of COVID these days, but the idea of this guy kind of losing his mind because the mundanity of his life is like it's not making sense anymore. Felt very COVID-y to me.
Well, it's interesting. It's sort of it sort of felt that way to me afterwards when I said, this is sort of what's going on now. This person, he's well, not to give away, but actually what's happening. But he's sort of reality. It's during COVID, we sort of got confined to these little boxes. Interacting with people on these little screens, as we're doing now, of course. But that sort of came later. But it's perceiving our reality in a completely different way, because we couldn't touch people anymore, we couldn't feel people anymore, but we had to have a sense of reality, and we did it through the sort of like these sort of electronic devices. So
yes,
we did it sort of that, but that came just a few months later, actually. Yes,
no, very, very, very prescient. I felt watching it last night. You mentioned it was a NIFCO first-time film program. Had you made films before in any capacity, or was it truly your first film?
I had made a documentary before that, a short documentary on Amelia Earhart.
Okay. Oh,
And
okay.
but I've been writing,
Wow.
like I've been a writer all my life and writing for radio, I've been writing for stage, writing for different things. And I was a musician, I was a professional musician for many years. So I sort of had my fingers in all these different pies and the different forms of the arts of writing and music and all the things that sort of I had to assemble and put together to make this film.
Yeah,
But
that's.
the
I was sorry. Go up. Continue.
Yeah, I was just going to say, but that's yeah, it's the first sort of narrative fictional film. This is really the first one.
Yeah, and so having all of those skills, like what was it like coming together? Like, what any challenges, or did you learn anything making your first narrative film?
Oh, a tremendous amount. I learned a tremendous amount, but different than all the things I did before, and yet all those things. I mean, making the documentary film, then I edited that as well. I edited this film, and so you learn all about that. There's a whole bunch of things you learn, and I writing for stage and writing for radio and writing for these things. I've learned all about script writing, but this was different. But I moved those skills over, and of course I scored the film because I've spent years and years playing music, and so I had those skills. But I had to apply those skills to this particular art form. It was wonderful. Actually, it was an opportunity to use a lot of stuff that I learned throughout my whole life, and be able to put it all together into this little 7-minute thing. But a tremendous learning experience and a lot of fun. It's just shooting film is just a lot of fun.
Yeah, it can be. It seems like Steve was having Steve Lush, the principal performer in your film, was having a pretty good time in it as well. What was working with him like?
Oh, wonderful. I mean, it's just so wonderful. I mean, say I direct him. I didn't direct him. He did. So and he did. It just wonderful. And when you're working with actors of that quality, you don't really have to do much as far as, at least I didn't do much as far as having to direct him. But it was just fun watching him and watching what he would do and how dedicated he was to this little film. And we did the so it was wonderful working with him. And it's as it was with Simon and Wendy, also the other two actors, and with the whole cast and crew, it's so different than I spent much more of my life as a writer or a composer or whatever, sitting in a little room all by myself, doing my little thing, creating my art all by myself. And you get out there on the set, and there's like 17 people on the set, and everybody's doing different things. You don't even know what they're doing, even though you're supposed to be the director. And so it's such a different experience and such a rich experience to be there with a lot of people who are doing all these different things and are good at what they do, and watching them do what they do. So it was a very rich and wonderful experience to me.
Yeah.
Having said that,
oh, please.
Oh, having said that, you talk about filming. It's fun, but it's also like one problem after another. And the first thing we did was we lost power. We had a 1-day shoot.
Oh no.
And we had 2 different sets within the same building. One was in the basement. We thought it was a guy a day to run all the power through one outlet downstairs, and of course the circuit breaker blew. And you would think the circuit breaker would be in the same building.
Oh no.
No. We were like pulling sets apart, trying to find the circuit box. Finally had to run power from upstairs. That took 2 hours, so we lost 2 hours out of our shoot. But we did get it done.
Well, a testament, I think, to like you said, it seems like you got a great crew, because it came out. I think it's a really I love that you mentioned the Twilight Zone, but because it definitely has that quality to it. You're not quite sure what's going on until suddenly you get the whole picture in front of you.
Yeah.
So sorry, what was that?
Yeah, I think I want to be Rod Serling. I even narrated it because I wanted to be Rod Serling. I just wanted to be him.
I actually didn't even pick up that you were the narrators. That's great. Could you see yourself kind of doing more like a Twilight Zone? Like more of these kind of little twisted little stories.
Yeah, I certainly love the genre. I love that, right? And there are other things I'm interested in as well. But I mean, it's as I said, I've been fascinated in reality and the switching around reality, how things change that little change in perception. And so the Twilight Zone was right up my alley, and it continues to be that sort of thing that I'm really fascinated in.
Yeah, I think it really comes through. I'm afraid to talk about it too much more in case we give it away, because it is a fun ending. Have you been keeping busy during COVID, or working on much anything?
Yeah, I'm shooting a new film. Actually, now I'm shooting it in about 3 weeks. Shooting about the middle of August. Another little short, and that was delayed because of COVID. Because it's sort of, we can't even get together for a meeting where we couldn't. So you do a lot of things like this. I've been talking to a lot of people on Zoom, and so you manage. But now, with the restriction is loosening a little bit, at least we get to shoot now. So in the middle of August, we're going to shoot another little film. It's called Look. And it's about the need for connection between people, and that the script, the idea was written before. The idea came before COVID, but then after COVID, it became much more relevant, I think, because that's all what we need. We're trying to find connection through these little boxes and this little screen, right? And so that's what that's about. But and I'm sort of facing eyes on that now. Right after we finish this, I'll have a cup of tea and tweak the script again. But
hey, where there's tea, there's hope. Am I right?
There's hope, yeah.
Right. The big question for you is: do you prefer tea or coffee?
That's interesting. I don't want to offend one by choosing one over the other. I drink both, but I would have had, if I had to be on a desert island with only tea or coffee, I would choose tea, because with tea there is hope. So.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for speaking with us today, Lauren. I'm really excited to make another film. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Well, I certainly appreciate it so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. All right, we've got.
Just want to interject before
Please.
too much time passes. Because the Olympics are happening now, and I looked up lacrosse. Lacrosse is set to be have provisional status at the 2028 games.
Oh, cool.
That's right.
That's exciting.
It won't be.
Will you be there, Joanne?
I'd love to be. It'll be a different game though. It may just be a 6-man abbreviated thing, but that's still good.
Wow, that's exciting. That's very cool. I didn't realize that. That's awesome. Yeah. All right, we've got one last filmmaker to speak with today, and that is Jeff Lewis, director of Tomorrow's Headline. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, boys. What are you at?
What are you saying?
And hello to Joanne and Kennedy from. I'm trying to get a sense where you guys are. I know Kennedy said she's down in Atlanta, and Joanne, are you in Western United States?
Yeah, Central California, Monterey.
Oh.
Central, yeah.
International call today, as of many of our chats have been, which has been really nice. It's I'd say the biggest silver lining of the online festival. All right, Tomorrow's Headline. Tell us a little bit about it. What's it about?
Yeah, so Tomorrow's Headline is about 6 people who are completely unrelated strangers that go to a coffee shop, and their stories all intertwined to make up the headline in tomorrow's paper.
Yeah, and I will say it's for a 50-minute short. There's you pack in a lot of. It's just a very, very dense, rich story. What was it like balancing all of those stories? Did they all kind of come at once and tie together, or did you have these kind of ideas that you needed to sort of figure out a way to bring together?
Yeah, it was insane.
Did you actually have the string to
the I was gonna ask
the
you,
poster board kind of stuff?
The Pepe Sylvia.
Yeah, that's there's a guy here in Newfoundland named Christian Davis who myself and Christian we went into we shot it in my parents' house, that part, and we just stuck a big piece of corkboard on the wall and just put the tack in with the string and did all that. And yeah, there is a lot in that, and it was so much in editing that it was insane. Like, I think I took a screenshot of the timeline of the edit, because there were so many individual cuts, and it was a lot of rendering went on in that.
It's so funny. When I was watching it yesterday, I was like, who edited this? Because it's very, very well edited. And then I got to the credits and found out that it was in fact you. So were you thinking about the edit a lot when writing and directing, or because it feels it's a very tight edit?
Yeah, I think I was probably the only person who would be willing to edit that, because there's so much to it. So thank you for that. But yeah, when it came to writing, so just like Lauren, we have this the program here in Newfoundland, the Newfoundland Independent Filmmakers Co-op, that lets you make your first movie, and they give you all the equipment, they give you everyone to go make it. So I made this under this program. It's incredible. Yeah, so I had another script that we were going to shoot, and it was kind of dependent on this like Greasy Spoon Diner, and we were having a hard time finding it. And there's this really great restaurant here called Scampers that's like stuck in the like 80s, maybe 70s. And we couldn't get the location, and it was really dependent on that. And so there's a mentor in the program, and he said, go home tonight and write something, whatever it is, write it and send it to me. And that's what we're going to shoot. And it was so much kind of pressure that I went home and I typed it up in about 3 hours or so. And it almost like blurted it out. And that's kind of what came out. So it's funny when you don't think about what you want to write and you just kind of write what's going on in your mind, that, you realize how convoluted your mind is.
What were some of the? Well, okay, I had a question about influences, which is maybe tough to ask if it was it's this like almost stream of consciousness, which is super interesting in its own way. But were there any kind of influences you had in mind? Because I got a lot of like 90s. I got like like maybe Tarantino's kind of easy, but like I definitely got a lot of that from the film.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I think everyone draws upon some Tarantino.
Sure,
yeah. Paul Thomas Anderson in
sure.
Magnolia, and his style of kind of piecing together is definitely like something to shoot for. That's like impossible to achieve. One of the things I learned in doing this is just how, like when Kennedy was talking about her movie and doing, and just sort of telling people to set it up and like doing it over Zoom. Like that sounds insane to me. I don't know. I don't know how you'd be able to do something from that perspective, because it's so there's so much in putting things together, and it isn't really until, and again, so this is my first movie. You go out and you shoot things as best that you make a plan, and most of the plan just unravels as the day goes, and then you're just kind of trying to scoop it back together, and then you shoot it, and then you get into an editing room, and it's like, oh man. I didn't really think about the fact that we shot their coverage before lunch, and then we came back after lunch and the sun was here and now it's over here, and like little things like that. So yeah, I mean, there's always, like, to go back to your question, I think, yeah, there's always like filmmakers that you see these like great shots or great moments in movies that you just like fall in love with. And then you like, to the best of your ability, you try and like recreate that. And you just realize like how difficult it is to do a push in, without getting a shadow from a window.
Yeah, that is true. There's all these like really fun stylistic flourishes in the film. We talked a little bit about the cork board, but there's also like a short little animated piece in there. There's all this like sort of TV archival footage stuff as well. Was that all part of the sort of fever dream writing the night before shooting, or did that come like later in post?
No, it came after, because I guess like when I wrote it down, it was like I wrote what I could, and you're given this deadline, so you just do whatever you can, you send it off. And then when we got into editing, I was like, oh, there's so much that doesn't make sense. So that cork board was almost a way to say, like, this is a really convoluted story. Like, how can I just kind of put it up in a way that would start to make it clearer? And that kind of came together. And then the animation, I went on this Facebook group, and I found, it's like storyboard artists, and I found this guy over in, I think he's in Brazil. His name's Pablo Khan, and I just asked him if he would draw up these. I said the concept is like tomorrow's headline in a newspaper, and I want to do this thing where we kind of flip to like the cartoon page in the paper, and then when it zooms in on the cartoons, there's a scene in it where this car gets shoved over a cliff, and someone's in the trunk, and they go into the I'm sure that anyone who's shot a movie before is like, well, that's great, but how are you going to shoot a car going over a cliff? So the most cost-effective way to do that was to pay a guy I don't know, like $50 or $100 or something to draw this cartoon strip. And yeah, it just kind of came together by not really knowing how to, not really having the resources, I guess. So yeah, it kind of
I don't know. I love the spirit of it. I love the energy of it, and it feels there. It's interesting to hear about the chaos of writing it because there's a chaos in the film, and it works really well. So I think it's really really great. Have you managed to be able to work on anything new in the past year?
Yeah, I just finished the second short.
Oh, amazing.
And I'm working on a draft of a third short now. And I gotta say, I think the one thing that I learned from doing all this is pacing. Like, I don't know, Kennedy and Joanne. I know Lauren, you said this is your first movie, and Devin, I know you've done a couple movies.
I have,
as well. Elling, I don't know if you've done movies. I know you do music, but when it comes to the editing and the piecing together of stuff,
Elling's made films.
Have you made films?
Yeah, secret films that are not available. No, I did 48-hour challenges.
Yeah, he's on challenges and stuff. Yeah. Which is a different kind of beast, but
I was in the sorry, yeah. I have a clip in a Star Wars remake.
Oh yes, that's true. Yeah,
my claim to fame.
Yeah, that where they made piece by piece. But sorry, you were saying about pacing.
Yeah, so so I learned because this was the first one that I did, and I just did another one again, and I think there's this like fear of being boring that I was just trying to cut back and forth and cut through stuff as much as I could. And then the more I watch, like when you do a movie, like you watch it so many times that by the time anyone else is ready to watch it, you're almost like done with it all together. You've watched it to its end. So it was actually really nice to finish this, because we finished it, I think it was end of 2019, and this was the first time when I watched it in the festival. It was the first time in a while I watched it, but I watched it again, and I looked at like pacing, and I think that's one of the things, I guess, that the more you do movies, the more you get comfortable in letting like a shot hold. And I think that's one of the things that in getting to watch your movie back and just learning to be comfortable with letting stuff hold for a certain time and not being like, oh man, this is really.
Yeah, I think it just takes it's building instinct. You know what I mean? It comes with time, but I don't know. I think this film works really well. So I'm really excited to see what you have coming up next.
Cool. Thanks.
Great. Well, I think that's all for today. Tomorrow's the last day of the festival, of course, which is Hell or Clean Water, which is a big local doc. So if you're watching this, I would highly encourage you to go and make an order for that. But of course, we have all these films from today that are available. And as you can tell from these conversations, a lot of cool special stuff today. And of course, yesterday's screenings still available as well. So lots to see over at nickelfestival.com, all for free. And yeah, so those are your Saturday night plans for you right there. Boom.
Guys, I just got to say that in watching this, I got my thanks to Devin and Elling as well, who put a lot of this festival together and did the programming and everything and lined up the interviews. And thanks so much for having me and part of the festival.
Our pleasure, Jeff. Yes. No, and also shout out to, she hasn't been on many of these chats. Shout out to Sandy May as well for helping organize these as well, because she deserves lots of credit for her hard work, and she's the best. All right, we're gonna call it there. Thank you all so much. Enjoy your afternoon.